entertainment is a business of hits, world of hits. And you can do it at a lesser scale than Netflix and succeed very nicely. You can just never ever be number one or have big growth, that the growth of those movie companies subsumed everything else that came along for 70 years. They have been subsumed now by huge tech companies that have different business models than they do, that they can never compete with. So all those companies have been around for 100 years. They're just going to be smaller enterprises without great growth prospects, but they'll be okay.
Barry, where does this podcast find you?
I'm in my New York office.
Is that the big sales?
Yes, it's the Sailcloth Frank Gehry building.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building. I've done several events there. So let's bust right into this. I want to get your origin story. I remember I had my senior year at UCLA, I had a job selling insurance and I wanted to break into media. And I had a friend named Tom Noonan, and he worked for you like 2 levels down, or he knew you. You were already kind of a master of the universe then.
But what is this, like ancient history we're doing here? Like, is this like 1912? When would this be?
No, this is like 1987. I think you were at Fox.
1987, I was at Fox. Yes.
Yeah. So I would just love to get your origin story and how you ended up as a fairly young man, kind of being a captain of media industry. Like, give us the origin story of Barry Diller.
Let's do when I kind of went to work, since I had no seeming ambition until I walked into the William Morris agency as a mail boy, basically, although I never really delivered mail. And I ended up reading the file room. And at that time, this was a huge room with big file cabinets. And in it was basically the history of the entertainment business. So I found a way not to deliver mail or do what the other guys were doing, which were trying to be agents, which I never wanted to be. And I basically read the entire file room. And that was the most fortuitous thing, because I got William Morris had been in business then for 70 years or something, and it represented almost everyone. So it had all the history. So I read the life of Elvis Presley. It was just incredible basing. And then I got serendipitously lucky in that they were going to throw me out of William Morris because I never wanted to be an agent. And they only did these mailboy things in order to turn people into productive agents. And I was never going to be that. And I'd finished kind of the file room, and I think they were getting ready to throw me out. And luckily, I took the only job that I was offered, which was to be the assistant to what I thought was a middle-level job at ABC in Los Angeles in what was called current programming. And the day that I accepted that job, they fired the czar of ABC. And they reached down and they picked my guy. So instead of being the assistant to this West Coast person, I moved to New York to be the assistant to the head of the network. And within 6 months, I was kind of running the program department. So there you go. That was at age 23.
There's something that clearly came from even earlier than that. What influences growing up gave you that type of drive, that type of creativity? Like, when you look back on your childhood and how you were raised, is there anything or people that stand out?
I think that all of the things that were enormous difficulties for me, insecurities, inadequacies, feeling that I had no self, that I didn't deserve for all sorts of issues of sexual confusion and stuff. And one big secret, which if you have one big secret, and it's an overwhelming one, it tends to let all the other risks reduce in size. So you can take these giant risks because the big risk is just obliviating everything else. So in a way, not that God knows I wanted it, but it allowed me to take risks everywhere else. My family never thought that I would actually ever work, and they had resources enough that it didn't really matter. But since I had no seeming ambition up until the age of really 19, and I didn't really want to go to school, and I was kind of just hibernating. But once I found, actually, when I walked into that William Morris agency, because I'd always been interested in the entertainment business, when I walked in and I started reading about that world, that just drew me like the fiercest magnet, and that ignited this. I don't know where that ambition was, but it was certainly born of not feeling that there was any self, or that I deserved any self, and therefore that was just big fuel for me.
Off mic, I was saying I wanted to talk more about business because everyone's focused on other parts of the book. But you said that your quote unquote secret, and I assume that's your sexuality you're talking about. Well, let me ask you this. If you were a 20s something executive in today's Hollywood, which is much more accepting of people's sexual orientation, do you not think you'd be as successful as you were?
God, I don't have a clue. I think, uh, well, no, I think I would not have. I definitely think that the tools that I developed out of all of these seeming disadvantages absolutely did propel me. Now, somebody else today would have different things that propel them, but for me, for sure, if I didn't have those, I'd probably be a ribbon clerk.
So I can't help but wax nostalgic here. So I was raised by a single immigrant mother, and we didn't see each other much during the week. She was a secretary, but we always we had a date, a standing date on Tuesday nights. You know what we did? ABC Movie of the Week, and it was a standing thing. And my mom would make meatloaf. Getting emotional just thinking about it. And my three favorites. People don't realize like how creative the creative breakthrough in that show. And I assume you're involved in all three of these things. One, Duel, Steven Spielberg's
Ah,
first
yes,
thing I can remember.
yes, yes, yes.
Two, in my opinion, Billy D. Williams' best movie, Brian's
Oh,
Song.
by far.
And then the most underrated, it was a movie of the week, but it turned into a show which I think was one of the most underrated shows of the 70s that I never missed an episode, The Night Stalker. Remember that with Darren McGavin?
Are you kidding? I mean, first of all, those three, there's a fourth called That Certain Summer, which was probably of all the, God, what did we make? I say we probably made 350 individual movies of the week during that 5 year, 7 year period. Certain Summer was my favorite for a lot of reasons. It was the first uh, dramatic depiction of homosexuality on broadcast television. And it was a lovely story uh, uh, about two men's relationship, and him having to tell one of them having to tell his son about his life. Night Stalker. I I got this book that somebody sent me that I respected, and it was about 200 pages long. I read it and I said, "Oh my God, a vampire in Las Vegas. What could be a better idea or a better place for a vampire to go than Las Vegas, which is open 24 hours a day, et cetera, is the definition of a night city." And I I I read it. I read those 200 pages in 3 hours and ordered up the movie. And when that movie was finished, it was so good that my colleagues at ABC said, "This is a theatrical movie. Let's release this in theaters. We'll make a fortune." And I said, "No, are you crazy? This is what we do. This is a movie of the week. That's where it's going. That's where it belongs." And of course, it then spawned the series, etc. And Brian's Song, I don't know that you can do better, for sure. I mean, yeah, you picked some good ones.
What other things early in your career sort of got you to the next level, if you will?
Well, I would say that, I mean, it was definitely, I mean, movie of the week was, again, I'm 23 or 4. And so my 20s were just dominated for 5 years by this. And then at the end of that, because after we'd made these movies, I was kind of used to the process, to say the least. And I thought that, uh, there were books that were made into movies, but big, sprawling, epic novels, uh, you can't tell that story in 2 hours, really. And I thought television has all this time, so why not do long, long form, which we called the novel for television, which evolved into the miniseries, which we all live with today for sure in streaming. And that created like the next bump because that was this out of nowhere huge success. So I had these two seminal thrusts really early. And I don't know it was that because it was a confluence of other events that landed me at Paramount and the movie business at also a really young age. And I was always the youngest, and now I'm always the oldest.
Yeah, it's weird. I often say I used to walk into every room and be the youngest. Now I walk into every room and I'm the oldest. I was never the same age. Just goes so fast. What? So you're sort of a decathlete in terms of different types of content. You started in TV and then you transition to movies. How is that different, or what skills? Is it the same skills, or did you need to develop different management and different capital allocation skills?
Oh no, well, it's the same tool set, I'd say, but it's applied to totally different uh, organizations. The movie business, television, if you didn't get it delivered on 7:30 on a Tuesday night, the screen went dark. In the movie business, if you didn't make a movie, nobody knew, nobody cared. So the rhythms are just so completely different. And the industry, movie industry, at its height of snobism, I don't think it's diverted that much today from what it was then in terms of looking down on almost all other forms. Though now the world is so, I don't know even what the definition of a movie is anymore, given the Netflixdom of life. But movie companies this is in the 70s, dominated world culture to such an extent. And we Paramount made probably fewer movies than most other companies, other studios, of which there were five dominant ones. We made maybe 15 to 18 movies a year. Other people made 25 to 30. So, that's kind of putting your tent up and taking it down every month or so. It's a completely different rhythm. Movie people peed on people from television. So I had like the good and the bad of people so discounting, saying, well, I'd be thrown out soon because a television person could never succeed in the exalted movie world. So they kind of left me alone for a couple of years where I figured out how to make the company run the way I was comfortable with. And uh and that was a very, very hard time where I certainly failed first because I believe almost everything I've ever done, you kind of, at least in my mind, fail first before you succeed. And so it was a completely different process that I had to adapt to. I was using the same basically toolkit of, in my case, which was developing material rather than buying packages with made to form directors, actors, writers, etc., that were given to studios by agencies. I wanted to develop, I've always thought it was my first thing of developing material. So I wanted to develop material. That takes a long time to do. Uh, but that process has never changed for me.
So while you were there, I just want to review this. You decided to go back to TV and essentially started the Fox television network, where Married with Children and The Simpsons were sort of the pillars there. Why did you go back to TV, and tell us a little bit about those two shows? Because someone told me The Simpsons is the most profitable TV show in history.
That is true. Well, back into TV, when I left Paramount to go to Fox, I tried to start a fourth network. There were at that time three networks, which got 100% of the viewing. There wasn't cable. I mean, cable just was getting a better signal. Uh, and so uh, three networks dominated everything. And I had thought over the years that while they started out with different personalities, by the 80s, they all talked, looked, and acted alike. And I thought, well, that's interesting. There's room for, I mean, maybe room for an alternative to that. So when I got to Fox, and their confluence, again, serendipitous events, was able to get a bunch of television stations that we could buy and start this fourth network. And in the beginning, we didn't find our vein until I got a script called Not the Cosbys. And now, Not the Cosbys means Bill Cosby Show was number one on television, had been for many years. And so when I saw the title Not the Cosbys, I was, oh, that's like interesting. And it was an anti-establishment family, which we later called Married with Children. And that I knew we'd struck the vein. And shortly thereafter, we had a show called Tracy Ullman, and in it were these interstitials that Matt Groening did with his character, The Simpsons. And Jim Brooks, great director who made Terms of Endearment, et cetera, said, who produced Tracy Ullman's show, said, I think we could make this into a series. And I said, yes, absolutely. Now, at that time, because animation took 6 months and whatever, we had to commit to 13 episodes without making, quote, pilot, et cetera. So it was a big commitment. We did it and made the 13 episodes, and we hadn't scheduled yet. And the first episode came back again like 8 months later. And we had this viewing in actually Jim Brooks's little bungalow on the Fox lot. And I brought the sales department and some other, like 12 people. And it was one of those screenings where Jim Brooks and I are the only people laughing. And when you're laughing at material that you've already seen before, you're really doing it to try and get other people to laugh. So it's like overperformance. And there, Jim and I are hooking it up, stone-faced every other person in the room. We walk out with my group out of the bungalow back up to our offices. And these guys said, well, can't air that. I mean, a cartoon? And they just all and I thought, as Jim did, this is great. Of course, we scheduled it. From the first hour of the first day, it was a smash hit. It's still going now, I don't know, well, certainly decades, 30 years later. But because of syndication and because of streaming and because of all this, now it's owned by Disney, there's no question that as a single entertainment product, it is the most profitable in history.
We'll be right back after a quick break. Support for the show comes from SelectQuote. I'm sure you've heard people say the phrase, you can't take it with you. And what that phrase means is that when you pass, all your worldly assets won't matter to you. And that's a nice sentiment, but your worldly assets will definitely matter to your loved ones. Should something happen to you tomorrow, you can make sure your assets are safe and secure for your legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote says they can help. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. And SelectQuote partners with carriers that provide policies for a variety of health conditions, or if you don't have any major health issues, they work with carriers that get you same-day coverage with no medical exam required. Get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/ProfG. Go to SelectQuote.com/ProfG today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/ProfG. Support for the show comes from SoFi Small Business Lending. You're a small business owner, you need capital to find new opportunities and grow, and you can do that with help from SoFi. You might know SoFi for student loans and high-interest savings, but now they help small businesses too. No more chasing bankers or wasting time in a branch. SoFi's Small Business Marketplace is your new go-to fast and digital solution. In one single simple search, SoFi matches you with vetted providers for your business in just minutes. You can discover options that meet your specific needs, and if you find a quote that works for you, you may receive funds as soon as the same day you're approved. Say it's working capital you need, or a line of credit, or an SBA loan, or equipment financing. SoFi's Marketplace can help you find all of the above. It's already helped thousands of small businesses find the funding they need. SoFi also offers business owners curated tools, vetted business bank accounts, business credit card recommendations, and a ton of resources to help you scale your business like a boss. SoFi, now helping you get your business right. Visit SoFi.com/Prof G Pod and see your options in minutes. Support for the show comes from TED Next. Let's be honest, we're not just busy, we're experiencing the greatest acceleration of change in human history. The pace of technology has left regulation, culture, and even our own biology in the dust. And somehow, we're supposed to figure out who we want to be. That's what TED Next is built for, to provide a toolkit for navigating a world where yesterday's playbook is already obsolete. It's an invitation to join a community of visionaries, emerging leaders, innovators, culture shapers, and change agents. And they all want to take the next step on their life's journey together. If you want to be part of something meaningful and energizing, TED is for you. I've spoken to TED myself. After working my ass off for 30 years, I was an overnight success after speaking at TED. I like the community, and I really found it very rewarding. Register for TED Next, November 9th to 11th in Atlanta. It's the rare convergence where career advancement meets personal reinvention, both non-negotiable for tomorrow's leaders. And right now, TED is offering our listeners a special rate at TED.com/Scott. Again, that's TED.com/Scott. So you then were able to pivot or evolve into online or e-commerce. What was the motivation there, and what inspired you to get involved in sort of the digital world?
What happened was after I left Fox, I wanted to be independent. I wanted my own store. I'd always worked for companies. I was the definition of a corporatist, and I was 49 years old. And I thought, well, if I don't strike out, so to speak, for independence, I never will. And I didn't like that idea that I never would. And that kind of forced me out of Fox. And then I had no clue what I wanted to do. All I wanted to do was not what I'd done before. I didn't want to run movie companies anymore. I'd run two. Uh, and a couple of people asked me if I would do that. And I said no. And I didn't want to be I certainly didn't want to be in the production business. That was kind of boring. But all I did is I created a vacuum. I said, okay, I'm going to go drive across the country and wait for something. And again, serendipity, my wife, who's in the fashion business, called me and said, you have to go see this QVC, this home shopping channel, because I'm thinking of going on it to offer my design clothes. And she said, just interesting, just go see it. So I wasn't doing anything. So I went to Westchester, Pennsylvania. And I got, again, I had this probably single epiphany, which is I saw screens being used for something other than to tell stories. Now, I knew, God knows, screens tell stories, but I didn't know anything else. I didn't know a screen could be interactive. And there I am at QVC, and I'm watching telephones and televisions and computers being used in this primitive convergence. And it struck me. I mean, it just banged at me of, wow. Now, this is 1993, 2 years before the internet really started being used by common folk. And I thought, wow, but I didn't think what was going to happen. I just knew it was going to change things, and I was fascinated with it. And then again, I've used this word serendipity, but it is the leitmotif of my life. A couple of months later, I was offered to buy QVC, and I did it. And so by the time the internet came along from this primitive convergence, now 2 years later, I had kind of in my fingertips an understanding of that world. And so when that happened, we were able to start all these businesses, the internet business, Expedia and Match and all these things that came along, because I was kind of present at the creation of this radical transformation into the digital age. I didn't plan it. I never actually planned anything. Uh, and but once I saw it, I was just again drawn like a magnet to it, and and that's what got it started. And then it just went from there.
You have a reputation for mentoring and developing or maturing a lot of pretty impressive executives, ranging from Strauss Zelnick to Dara Khosrowshahi at Uber, Don Steele, One of my investors, Tim Armstrong, speaks very highly of you. Be curious, what do you, when you see someone, what attributes in them or signals tell you this person is worth making an investment in, and this person could play a really important role? What do you spot in people and think this person's a comer?
Spark, energy, edge, uh, being alive to the moment, and that's all I need. I don't, I don't, I don't like, or I shouldn't say, education, unless they're tool sets you need to do a specific task. But education doesn't impress me. Certainly, MBAs don't impress me. I think they're overeducated or narrowly overeducated. Uh, and I just look for somebody who's got some spark and edge, and just has to have a live mind and be open to possibilities and be curious. If I see that, that's enough to start. And every one of the people you mentioned, I'm not sure everyone, but almost everyone that's come into my life in that way, usually comes in at the juniorest of levels. Uh, and you see that little spark or whatever it is. And I don't like, I think mentoring is it's gotten too official. It's like choose your mentoree or whatever, all that stuff. I think it's a little high flown, but I think if you get people at the earliest age and they get into your environment and you can bash around with them in different roles that they could play, and then they grow up within the organization, they just get big dosages of everything. And some it takes and some it doesn't.
I'm curious what you think. If when you look at the media world right now, are there any kind of specific trends that pop out to you, and any thoughts on, say, you're coming out and you want to be the next Barry Diller? Where do you think the puck is headed?
Well, I have no clue where it's headed, really. I mean, well, I can, well, a couple of things maybe. I mean, if I was starting today, I would look for things that can't be disintermediated, because I think the the changes that are afoot are gonna, things have been, as you know, internet disintermediated lots of stuff. AI is going to put that to G-force power. So if I were, again, mine wasn't my own experience. All I got is my own experience. I was drawn to stuff. I didn't suss out, oh, entertainment business looks like it has this or that quality about it. I was just fascinated by it. I think you think, what fascinates you? What are you interested? What are you curious about? And then just get on the broad path of it somehow. Just start. However you, whatever door you have to bash through, whatever you have to do, uh, just get on the main path of whatever intrigues you, and it will take you, or not, but it'll take you where you're supposed to go. As against the dopes, particularly entertainment business, who say, I want to run a studio. Anyone who says that to me, I would throw out of my office. I mean, that's like such an idiot goal. I think, look, if you want to be a doctor, uh, yeah, you gotta have a goal. You got to get a degree or other things. But uh, if those aren't necessary, then early age goal stuff is really stupid. You should only be governed by what you're curious about and get in the lane.
In terms of the media ecosystem right now, you've actually, I think some of the stuff I read, you've called for antitrust. Do you think the ecosystem is too concentrated right now?
The lawsuits against Google and
Yep. Alphabet.
yeah, I don't know how practical it is. Look, I think with Google, the thing is, Google was and is currently, but my little currently is on the head of a little pin, because that's changing. Google is an absolute monopoly, no question. You lived as a serf in their land if you had anything internet or traffic oriented that you needed for your services or products. A total monopoly. I think that's just about to change. Now, maybe their Gemini will take over search just like their Google took over search 20 years ago. I doubt it. I don't think the chances are great. So it seems awfully late. Maybe you need most antitrust stuff does come late of this kind. I don't know if that how what sense that makes. And as for separating uh Instagram or WhatsApp and trying to get them, I mean, it's also I think the basis of that doesn't make any sense. I don't think that they are anti-competitive. At the heart of the Meta lawsuit doesn't make any total sense to me. But okay, all of that, I think that what is happening on the eve of today, in the next year or two, is there's going to be so much diversity in AI empowered stuff that I think these tech monopolies, except for Apple, which is not a monopoly, but is the greatest business, as you know, the iPhone business and its walled circle. Uh, you can't, I don't know how you do better. But I don't think these companies are going to, these companies probably, because they're so big and so profitable, that offshoots of them, look, Google has YouTube, which is a giant. People don't realize how powerful YouTube is. YouTube is probably going to be worth more than Google search in a while, because I don't see that getting disintermediated. So anyway, I'm long-winded about this. I don't think that the breakup. I think it's the breakup of these things is so late in the game that they're going to get uh, competed with vociferously by everything else coming from AI.
You mentioned YouTube, which is a good segue into the streaming wars. When you look at Netflix and all the other players, I think of it as Netflix and the Seven Dwarves. Any predictions or any feel for how that might shake out?
5 years ago, I said Netflix won. Everybody get over it. Please don't try. Don't overinvest to try and become or compete against Netflix. You cannot do it. They lead in every respect, not only the movie business, but certainly the television business. In every respect, they are dominant. They set the rules, and everybody else abides by those rules. Doesn't mean that there aren't other companies that can be successful with their streaming if they scale it down, uh, their costs going into it, and they make good programming. Because in the end, entertainment is a business of hits, world of hits, and you can do it at a at a lesser scale than Netflix and succeed very nicely. You can just never be ever be number one or have big growth, that the growth of those movie companies subsumed everything else that came along for 70 years. They have been subsumed now by huge tech companies that have a different business model than they do, that they can never compete with. So all those companies have been around for 100 years. They're just going to be smaller enterprises without great growth prospects, but they'll be okay.
There's a lot of, you see all these TikToks about people saying that, Hollywood is under such, especially production, the production is way down in LA, and that everyone's asking for tax credits to make it more competitive. And I think Netflix now spends more than half of its content budget overseas. Do you think that Hollywood is to the entertainment industry what Detroit was to the automotive industry? Is this cyclical or structural?
Hollywood hegemony is gone forever. Again, Hollywood now is dominated by Netflix, a tech company, Amazon, a tech company with a completely different business model than anybody in the entertainment business could have ever conceived of, which is, we don't care if you watch this stuff really, or that if it's, we don't need really hits. We need you to join Prime, and we're going to give you this stuff in the front of the store, in order to get you in the store of Prime. How do you compete with that? It's not possible. And then there's, of course, Apple and its efforts in programming. So uh, tech are now the overlords. Hollywood is, yeah, I'm not saying it's culturally irrelevant, because a lot of stuff gets created there or is organized there. Whether it's shot there or shot someplace else is somewhat irrelevant. Though I think it's very relevant to the crafts, all of whom live in LA. And I think LA County, LA City, California State has been so frigging dumb in not offering the kinds of production below the line incentives that every other state and country has offered, that has pulled the centrality of just making this stuff away from the place that's got all the craft expertise. Kind of crazy, but there it is. Certainly tariffs aren't going to help that. That's brainless. Um, so it's just a completely different system now than what it was for, dominated again for close to 100 years by just a handful of companies that subsumed almost everything that came along technically until Netflix busted the apple.
We'll be right back. Support for the show comes from the podcast The World as You'll Know It, hosted by science journalist and Yale professor Carl Zimmer, author of Life's Edge and Airborne. The World as You Know It is a podcast about the forces shaping the future. This season, Zimmer speaks to some of the most respected scientists in the field of longevity research about what old age could look like in the future. Humans are already living longer than ever, thanks to advances like vaccines, antibiotics, and clean water. And with the incredible progress being made in treating deadly conditions, including heart disease and cancer, mortality rates for each have dropped by double digits. Now, science is tackling a new challenge, curing aging itself. Will new breakthroughs add even more years to our lives? Can older brains be rewired to function like younger ones? And which so-called biohacks actually work? Join Carl Zimmer as he investigates what current science is claiming about longevity and gets to the bottom of what's unbelievable and what's actually possible. You can find The World as You'll Know It, The Future of Aging, wherever you get your podcasts, or you can listen at aventine.org/podcast. That's aventine.org/podcast. Support for the show comes from Mercury, the banking product that feels extraordinary to use. When you're a startup founder getting your business off the ground, the last thing you want to be doing is toggling between a dozen apps and clunky banking services that can barely keep up with your needs. Enter Mercury. Mercury is the banking product made by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. What makes it so special? Well, Mercury isn't technically a bank. They provide banking services through partner banks and are able to focus on delivering well-designed software that helps navigate some of the tedium for you. Because when your finances are simple, your mind is free to focus on the real work of growing your business. With Mercury, you get the tools you need to operate at your best, scale your business, and keep your spend under control. Visit Mercury.com to join over 200,000 entrepreneurs who use Mercury to do more for their business. Mercury, banking that does more. Mercury is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Choice Financial Group, Column NA, and Evolve Bank and Trust, members FDIC. The IO card is issued by Patriot Bank, member FDIC, pursuant to a license from MasterCard. We're back with more from Barry Diller. So I want to, in our remaining time here, I want to switch to stuff that's more personal. You've had what I would argue, from at least an exterior perspective, is a very successful partnership with your wife. You guys have been together, married for 2.5 decades, but together for 5 decades. Is that right?
And except for an interregnum period when I was sent off to the wilderness, which lasted almost about 10 years. But yes, it's almost 50 years.
Your 2 kids, I'm friends or friendly with Alex. My sense is you have a really good relationship with them. What advice would you have for husbands and for dads around fostering and cultivating strong relationships with your partner and your kids?
I don't know. I guess be engaged or whatever. I'm not really very good at advice. I think I just think, again, if you're lucky enough that, and luck is a part of it, and of course there's other stuff in there, but luck is a real part of what is the result of a child that gets to be, let's see, a semi-adult in their teens or post-teens or 20s, whatever, in their kind of development period. And, if they come out of that as responsible, whatever your definition of responsible is, and you're engaged with them, it's really not me. You know what? As I think about it, it's not me. It's Dion, my wife. I don't know. I've never seen anyone else's relationship with their children, which is like that. It's not the old Elaine May, Mike Nichols thing of, of guilt in calling, quote, your mother. This family talks to each other every day and multiple times a day, and none of it is effortful. It's effortless. And that's just the, the children and the grandchildren, much younger, obviously, but the children are, everybody's life is kind of intertwined. There's no, I'm marveled. People say, well, I haven't talked to my mother or father in 2 weeks, or I call them every Thursday or whatever, something like that, formalized. Could not be further from the truth. I just think, I don't got no advice here. I just think if you're lucky enough to have that kind of, easy is not the word for it, but natural engagement and enfoldment, that uh, good things happen.
So you're 83. You've checked a lot of boxes. Like, what boxes are left for you? Like, do you have, when you think about your purpose and what's left for you and what you want to accomplish, you haven't accomplished? What is that, or those things?
I don't think it's accomplishment. I never thought about accomplishments in that sense. I think it's, am I still curious? Uh, I have, I'm still responsible for two public companies, probably three actually now. Uh, and as long as I'm curious about them, uh, then I will have something to contribute. And that kind of goes on just like a clock that doesn't stop, or an energizer bunny that you can't turn off. I mean, that's just that's just nature. But what I do think about is, and I don't think of, I hate that word legacy anyway, so I think it's stupid, but uh, what I want to do, I like public art and uh, public places. And I've been lucky enough to be involved in a few of those. And I want to do as many more of those as I can, because I think there are very few people who have the resources and the will or desire to do that. And since I got that, then I think it'd be criminal for me not to spend those resources and my own juice to create more public places and public art, because I marvel at what has been created by others and lives for hundreds of years, and you come upon it and you say, how the hell did they decide to do Central Park? You know, how did they, whatever it is, any place that there is anything that is of a public institution.
Barry Diller is a businessman known for his influential roles in media and entertainment. He's the chairman and senior executive of IAC. His new book, Who Knew, is out now. He joins us from his office in Manhattan. Barry, I've only had one dinner with you, but I think everybody just wants to be Barry Diller.
Oh
You
God,
just
yeah.
have a certain,
Good luck to, yeah,
well,
whatever.
you just have a certain fearlessness about you that I think we're all drawn to, both professionally and personally. Really appreciate your coming on the show.
I'm glad I did. It's been actually enjoyable in these situations, which I never think are. But anyway, all right.
There
Thank
you
you.
go.
Bye.